Hi folks, Wes Penny here. Got a few requests to do a video on the Shellback resin Scud that I tied yesterday and posted some pictures on social media. So I'm going to try and do that. I have a video out, you may have watched it already, in tying a basic resin shrimp. So a lot of the techniques I'm going to do again here, but there's a couple added extra steps. This is unfortunately not going to be a quick video. This is kind of painstaking at times. It'll take a little while, but hopefully you'll stick around and watch it, or at least take some parts of it and use it. So I'm using a Firehole 316. This is a size 8, which is bigger than I would normally tie the Scud. Normally I'd go 12, 10 at the biggest, but I'll do an 8 just for the bigger hook for the video. And starting off with Textream power thread. This is white and size small. So we'll just start your thread like you would normally do, and we're going to wrap right down into the bend of the hook. Down into the bend, then I will reposition the hook. So I'm tying on the top. It's just easier to add material. First thing I'm going to add is some mallard flank. And this is gray, or kind of a more natural color. So we'll put it right over top of the bend. And then just pull it to kind of the length that you want. A couple of wraps to secure it. You could also add in here some crystal flash, some hollow tinsel, anything to give it more of a color. I'm going to do something that I haven't done with these before up until the one yesterday, and that's I'm going to add some CDC to it, just to give a little bit of extra movement on the tail. So I'm just going to take a pinch, and again right over top. Clean that off, and then just pinch that so it's not too long. And then we'll put the hook back the way we want it, and wrap all the way back up towards the eye. Okay, then I'm going to tie in a length of gray wire. This is kind of a flat gray, it's almost white. This is a BR size, and the size is important later when we add the final bit of resin, because it also keeps the resin in place when we're applying it. So wrap that all the way down. And come back up. Okay, the next thing I'm going to tie in is called Magic Stretch. Where did I put it? So Magic Stretch is a clear stretch cord. Sorry, I had to find it. You can get this from a beading shop, a craft store, you know, Michael's, even Walmart has a brand. So this is 0.7 millimeters, and it's just a clear stretch. So one of the little tricks with this, when you tie it in, you can see it's nice and stretchy, is to take your lighter and just heat the end of it, and then pull, and it'll give you this little pigtail, which makes the stretch thinner and easy to tie in. We're just going to hook the thread into to the pigtail. Right about there. And give it a pull so it's tight all the way down. And tie it right into the bottom, and again, come back up. And then you can cut off the little excess piece there. Okay, the next material I'm going to tie in is Textreme Body Fly, and I'm using two colors, and it's olive dun and gray, and I'm going to wrap them in and tie them in at the same time. So we'll take the two ends together and tie them in. Do a quick whip finish because we're going to use the rotary vise. Kind of at this point, this is where you can change the fly up. If you want it to be tan or dark green, whatever color you want, you can use different materials. You can just go with a thread and color the thread with Sharpies or markers. You can use wire, you can use hollow tinsel, anything to kind of customize the body. I like using this because it gives kind of a double appearance. So it's not really segmented, but it gives you just kind of a mix of the two colors of the gray and the light olive. So just hold them together. And we're just going to wrap all the way down. You got to really watch the point of the hook so you don't end up snapping your material. Just come all the way back up, and I'll go back and forth quite a few times. Just keep building up the color. And then kind of from this point back to about a third of the way back, you want to build that up so it's higher than the rest of the hook, and that just helps get your body profile when you do the resin and wrap the magic stretch over top. So I'm just gonna go back, and you can see that it's starting to build up on the top. I could have done this with the thread as well, but this stuff's thicker and it'll just pile up faster. So right to about there is where I like it. Bring it in. I'm gonna tie that off. And we'll do another whip finish there. And then we'll take the magic stretch from the base, give it a good pull so it's thin, and then just wrap it all the way up. And keep it tight until you start getting towards the top. Then you can loosen the tension a bit. And then once you get to where you've built up the body, you can just leave it quite loose so it's thicker. And then as it starts to slope down, I'll put more tension on it again and thin it out. And get to just a little bit, I'll go right about there. Then bring your thread back. And if you wrap your thread a few times in front of your last wrap of the magic stretch, it'll build a bit of a wall and stop the magic stretch from sliding ahead of you. And then we're just going to wrap it in. Remember, this is under quite a bit of tension, so I go back and around quite a few times. Okay, so that should hold that, and then we'll just cut that off. And there you can see you've got that nice kind of bulge at the front of the hook. Then we're going to go back to the mallard flank. Take another pinch of mallard flank, and this will be for the front antenna. Just catch that right over top of the eye. It doesn't interfere with the eye, the hook, because it's so soft it'll just move out of the way when you put your tippet material through. And again, I'm going to take a little pinch of CDC. This will give you a lot more movement in the water. And just wrap all that down, get it nice and clean. And we'll finish that because we're basically done tying with thread at that point. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to tie in is the legs. And I use Congo hair. So I'll be using 3 colors. There's a pale green, baitfish olive, and silver. So I use those 3. You could also use Antron, that would work quite well, and I've used Antron in the past. So I'll take 2 colors. I'll take this silver and the darker olive, and just take a pinch of each, so you know, the fairly long strands, and mix them together. Just pull them apart and mix them together, and give yourself just maybe about a 4-inch length with the 2 colors mixed. And I'll be using some Textreme varnish. So take the 2 and get them nice and smooth and even, and hold them right over top. Kind of get them where you want them, and then just pull down. And this is where the magic stretch comes into play, because you're going to pull the Congo hair right down in between the ribs of the magic stretch. You can pull it down quite hard. And then I'm going to take, sorry, get my hand in the way here. Take a little bit of varnish over the back and onto the sides, and this is going to hold this in place. And you really want to make sure that your varnish doesn't flow down into the legs, because it'll just make them really brittle. So get that on there and give that a cure. Then we'll take another bit of the same stuff with the Congo hair. Same thing, we'll just even it out and drape it over the back. Just give it a tug down into those ribs. And again, we're going to put varnish over the back, a little bit on the sides. And cure it. Okay, then I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut these hairs just above the point of the hook. Now you can leave them straight like that if you prefer. I like to stagger them and get them different lengths, also thin it out a bit. So one of the things, little tricks here, is to go up underneath, straight up. Now, if you cut at an angle, you're going to cut the hairs, but if you cut straight up while you're doing this, you're thinning it out, kind of staggering the hairs a little bit. And I'll cut a bit more out of the middle. I'm going to have to put my finger in the way here for a second, just to move the hairs out of the way. But again, just keep cutting straight up. I'm not really doing anything more than thinning it out just a little bit. And I've got to go around to the back side here. So there you get your legs, just have a much nicer, kind of a natural look rather than just straight across the bottom. And then I'll take a very, very thin clump of the light olive. Was it light olive? Pale green. And I'm going to put that right over top of the head. Hold it down and pull it rearwards a little bit. And take a little bit more varnish. Okay, now turn that at a bit of an angle, just slightly below the hook point. And again, go in and just clean it up a little bit, cutting straight up underneath. And that's your legs. Make sure all that loose fiber is cleaned off. A toothbrush is handy for just kind of cleaning that. Okay, then we're going to start into our resins. And the first resin I'll use is Gulf Classic. This is a clear resin. And I'm just going to build up the body a little bit. And you'll work mostly the front half. Just get a bodkin and you can move this. We're going to clean up the loose hairs in a bit. You actually have quite a bit of time to play with resin as it's flowing down. If you're getting a little worried about it going into the legs, just flip your hook upside down and let it run back a little bit, and you can go back into cleaning it up. So you can see I don't put very much on the back. That's just to keep the profile. One little tip with working the profile is to really follow the shape of the hook. And that'll help you just keep that bend. Okay, then we're going to wrap the wire. So I'll take the wire and go, get my bodkin ready. And just do your first wrap, kind of brush the hairs out of the way as you do it. If you wiggle the wire, it'll work through the Congo hair a little easier. And then just keep going around. Just wrapping your segments, trying to keep them as even as possible. If you find that as you're wrapping the wire that it's sliding on the back, you can just tack it down with a tiny bit of resin. So far, so good. So right there, it wants to slide on me a bit. So I'm going to get just a little bit of resin on the end of a bodkin. Just gonna put some, use very little. And hold your wire where you want it and just give it a quick cure. And then we'll go back. Now I don't tie the wire off with thread. We're actually going to use resin to, so you can see right where it's around that bend. I want to put a little bit of resin right there, and that will hold because we're going to add quite a bit more resin yet. So I'm just going to put a little dab. And take some old scissors. I'm just going to clip that off. So that wire will stay in place once we put a bit more resin on the back. Brush all those hairs out of the way. Get hairs that are sticking up, just come in and cut them right off. Okay, so now to create the shellback and give you that segmentation, I'm going to be using Gulf Ghost, which is a white resin. And I'm going to put a little bit, I'm hoping you can see this on the video, I'm just going to put a little bit of the white resin on a piece of foil. And then I'm going to take Gulf Black Magic, so obviously just black resin, and I'm going to put a drop of that in with the white. So I'm going to make a very light gray colored resin. I should have had these things upside down. And just a small drop, not much. It's easier to make white resin gray than it is to make black resin gray. And then I'm just going to mix the two colors. It's a little darker than I'd like, so I'm going to add a little bit more white. Yeah, it looks pretty good. So I don't know if you can see on the aluminum, it's a nice light gray color. So you want a really fine point bodkin, and I'm not sure where I put it. This is a tough part when I've got my desk with, there it is, with video camera or my phone and stuff. Nothing's where it normally would be. So just take a very small amount of resin on your bodkin. You can take the fly and tilt it upwards a little bit, and that'll help stop the resin from flowing down. So we'll take just a little tiny bit, and we're gonna dab it on the back of the wire. So the wire will stop it from flowing backwards. And then I'm gonna take my bodkin and I'm just gonna draw down. I'm gonna try and do it on here, but you would just get into the resin and just draw it down along the wire. Always keeping that resin below or at the height of the wire. You don't want to go above it. Just bring it down. And then we'll cure that. So this is a bit of the slow process. Now we have to do each one separately, or one at a time. Really hard to do this without getting my hands in the way. And just bring the resin down along the wire. So what I do is I just kind of let it drop right in there and then go down the side. You don't actually have to have the identical amount of resin. You just want to make sure that it stays at the height of the wire. Move that down a bit. That one's a little bit low. Easy enough to wipe off if you get it where you don't want it. Sorry, I'm trying to do this so you can see. Couple more to go. tiny hair in the way there. Okay, and then I will go back up to the very front. I'm going to put just a little bit on the front. And then we'll go back to the black magic and just take a little drop. I'll actually use my thumb. Just get a little tiny drop on the end of your bodkin. And you want to just touch it and lift for the eye. And it kind of makes a little ball on its own. You can see, just go and just kind of measure where the other one is and then just touch. And that is just about does it. I'll just go back and clean up some of these hairs that are tiny little hair sticking up there. So there's the Shellback resin Scud. It takes a bit of practice just using the resin, but if you just take your time with it and don't use very much, you can always come back and add later. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed that, and if you stuck around watching the whole thing, thank you. I hope you give it a try, and good luck with it. Thanks very much.